And welcome in, everybody, to the Last Row Podcast, a fan's perspective on sports. Let's stop the recording real quick because that's not right. Sorry, YouTube, you're going to see this little edit thing here. And welcome in, everybody, to the Last Row Podcast, a fan's perspective on sports. It's Brian here inside the ARM Media Solutions Studios on this Wednesday, March the 4th, 2026. Hope you are well. Hope you are happy wherever it is you may be. Thank you so much for joining us, whether you are joining us tonight or today on Apple Podcasts or through Spotify. We do appreciate each and every one of you listening, subscribing, and leaving a rating as always. If you are joining us on our social media, you can follow us on Twitter or X. You can do so at Last Row Podcast. If you are following us on TikTok, where we are live and in living color, coast to coast, sea to shining sea, and around the world, we are live on TikTok live tonight. Good evening to everybody in the chat. John, good evening to you, sir. You can check us out there on TikTok at last.row.podcast. You can also find us on YouTube Live at Last Row Podcast, as well as Amazon. An Amazon podcast. We are so thankful to be with you. Big thanks to our good friends over at I Know a Guy Remodeling. We'll hear from them here in just a little bit. Man, oh man, I got to tell you, there are a lot of different rumors, lots of different creators out there that are, we'll just say, giving false information. And you have to be very careful anymore about what you are looking at, what you are reading, what you are seeing. Look, I'll just be honest with you guys. I try to follow as many of the rumors as, of course, I can from the reputable reporters, Ian Rappaport, Adam Schefter, things like that. I try not to get involved with other reporters. So, with that being said, there are lots of rumors right now happening. There are lots of false reports regarding the Chicago Bears and what they are looking at or what they're doing. So I'm just telling you that there are a number of different items that we're going to address here tonight. Rumors, thoughts, things like that. But I want to start the night, if we can, with a little bit of sad news. It is with a very heavy heart tonight that we talk about Lou Holtz and the former Notre Dame Fighting Irish head coach who passed away today at the age of 89 at his home in Orlando. And I just have to tell you, Lou Holtz was a staple in my home as a child growing up. We watched the Irish because of our family ties to Notre Dame that we have. And Lou Holtz was, without question, every Saturday afternoon and or evening, whether it was on CBS Sports, NBC, ABC, whatever. The old adage of God, country, Notre Dame rang true in our family. And we were, and we are, Golden Domers through and through. Not because we are fair weather fans or anything like that, but because of family. And we have very, very, very strong ties in South Bend still to this day with our relatives that we have. And whole family is Golden Domers. So when we heard that Coach Holtz passed today, I will just say this: Heaven just got a phenomenal head football coach, and it was a um, not necessarily a shock, but it was a you know it was sad, and it's been sad, and he will always be known for his time at Notre Dame. He had a little run at University of South Carolina. He was at University of Arkansas, Minnesota for a year, and then Notre Dame. He was also head coach in the NFL with the Jets for a season. And he compiled a head coaching record overall of 249, 132, and 7. He was and is still loved and revered by folks in South Bend, and still thought of as one of the best coaches in Notre Dame history. And he was the last coach to bring them a national title in 1988, and he absolutely was a phenomenal coach, but an even better human being. And with Lou Holtz passing today, thoughts and prayers are with his family, from all of us here at the Last Row and ARM Media Solutions. And we certainly we think of all the joy that he brought, and all of the love and passion and fire that he brought, and the life lessons that he taught. And he was elected to the College Football Hall of Fame, rightfully so, in 2008. He went on to then be with ESPN and was there for 10 years, from 05 to 15. And I believe it was college football. I want to say it was college football. Was their studio show. College Football Scoreboard, College Football Final, College Football Live. And it was College Football Live, I think, John, that you're thinking of, where he dressed up as the judge. And he was absolutely a great human being. Great football coach, but even better human being. And he talked about how he didn't coach football, but he coached life. And the men that played for him, including cousins of mine, the men that coached with him, including my great uncle, who knew him, and who, and our family that knew him, was fantastic, and had nothing but positive things to always say. And Coach Holtz was absolutely a master motivator. He could take any topic and make it relevant to your life. And John, just to build on what you were talking about, you went to a conference and he spoke on leadership, and it was amazing. And look, there was no better football coach in the 1980s on leadership, and in the mid to late 80s than Lou Holtz. And there was a classic rivalry between he and Jimmy Johnson, and Miami and Notre Dame, and Boston College and USC. And look, it growing up as an Irish fan, still to this day, I cannot hide my disdain for Boston College. I cannot hide my disdain for USC, and for Miami, even though I try really, really hard. Catholics versus convicts was one of the biggest news stories of the late 80s, early 90s. How it was marketed by the guys at Notre Dame, students at Notre Dame, was just incredible. And Coach Holtz never really bought into that element or that side of it, really. but he always was a Golden Domer, and he will always be a Golden Domer, no matter when when from where he went with South Carolina. He will always be remembered as the man that put Notre Dame um, back to prominence in the 80s, and the guy that will go down as one of the greatest leaders of men in all time. In 2020, he received the Presidential Medal of Honor from President Trump during his first administration. And Coach Holtz was just a phenomenal human being. And so, um, yeah, have to pay our respects to the coach. And there's not too many like him, and there won't be many more like him. So, again, thoughts and prayers are with him and his family. And once again, Heaven just got a really good football coach. So, prayers to you, Coach, and Godspeed. All right, let's talk here some NFL. We opened the show talking about rumors and different types of rumors and different handles and things like that, and different things that are going on, and rumors, and this guy's going here, that guy's going there, and that's the age that we live in, unfortunately, of social media, where everybody's a quote-unquote expert. And I feel that it's safe if you have a podcast and or radio show, whatever it is, that you have sources that you trust, and you have people that you trust. And look, for me, until I see it from Ian Rappaport, Adam Schefter, Mike Florio, I don't like reporting on things as news events until it happens. And we're going to get to the McDuffie trade, which I believe it's interesting. I'll say that. It's very interesting. And what the Rams are getting back, what the Chiefs are getting back for that, very interesting. Very interesting. And I have to wonder what is. I know it's a salary cap move. I know it's also a move. And John, you stole my thunder right there. They've done a phenomenal job in Kansas City developing young cornerbacks, and they keep them for 4 to 5 years, and then they let them go and they trade them, and they're able to turn them around for draft capital typically. And with McDuffie going to Los Angeles, they get a very good corner that is going to be productive in a defense that needs the help. And I feel as if for Kansas City, getting draft capital back in a draft that is absolutely incredibly deep is a very big get. I'm finding that there are a majority of Bears fans that are in love with the idea of getting giving up draft picks to get mid-tier guys. And I will just say this. I'm not okay with that. I would much rather give up, for example, one of the deals that I have heard and seen rumors on is DJ Moore to the Patriots, who are releasing Stephon Diggs, which is not a surprise. Tremaine Edmonds to the Raiders, and multiple draft picks going back to LA, or excuse me, Vegas, and Max Crosby coming to Chicago, so on and so forth. If that means you don't have to give up, your first and a second to get him, I'm okay with that. If you have to give up 2 1s, I'm okay with that. If you have to give up 2 1s and a 2, I'm not okay with that. I don't want Max Crosby at that cost. I would much rather have a Trey Hendrickson, or I would much rather have a Bobby Okereke. I would much rather have guys that can play the run well and tackle. And yes, they can get pressure on the quarterback, but then you know what? At the same point in time, give me Tyler Linderbaum then as my starting center, and get me a left tackle somehow, some way, without having to get rid of draft capital. I'm okay with that. But if we're talking about giving up multiple picks over 3 years, a 3rd round pick in 2028, a 2nd rounder in this year's draft, and 2 first rounders in this year's draft and next year's, that's way too much to give up. I don't believe in, and look, I'll just be honest here. The longer that this trade window stays open for Max Crosby, the better off it is, because look, the Cowboys have offers, the Bears have offers. Crosby has stated via multiple reports that I've seen that Chicago is his preferred destination. Again, those are per reports that I've seen, but you don't know until the deal is done. And Badger, we're going to get to that. We're going to get to Mr. Rogers and his comments today in just a few minutes. I promise you that. So stick around for it. And we're going to talk about Stefon Diggs, John, in a moment or two. And I've seen that rumor with you as well, John, about Kansas City trading picks 9 and 40 and a 27 to the Titans for the 4th, and they take Jeremiah Love. I agree with you wholeheartedly. That would be the smart move by Kansas City. That would be good for them. My thought process, though, is this for the Bears. If you can somehow, some way, figure out a way to get Max Crosby without giving up massive amounts of draft capital, that's a win. Because in this draft, you need to have as many draft picks as humanly possible. Because if you can have as many draft picks as humanly possible, you can then replenish your defense that you need to. You can also get some good value either at center or at guard or even at tackle positions on the offensive line, and develop those guys with their head coach or with their offensive line coach, Dan Rochar, who's done a very good job and has done a very nice job in the NFL developing young talent. So, my thought process is if you can avoid giving up, and this isn't just for the Bears, this is everybody in the NFL. Look, you want to build sustained success, right? The only way to do that really is by drafting really, really well. We saw in Minnesota, Kenzie Adolfo-Mensah not do that. He did not draft well. That's why he's out of a job. But now you have an opportunity to really get better in the draft room. You want to build sustained success through the draft and develop young guys. And with them, with any of the teams, you want to build it from within. If you can avoid having to spend lots and lots and lots of money on free agents that may not pan out, i.e. Dayo Adangbo, Chicago, that's a good thing. Or if you spend money wisely on guys that can pan out, like Drew Dahlman, like Tyler Linderbaum, people like that, Jonah Jackson, Joe Thuney through a trade. Any of that can help. Now, in terms of New England releasing Stephon Diggs, I will say this much about it. I think this is a Mike Vrabel move more than anybody. I think Mike Vrabel is tired of the antics. I think he's tired of. Look, Mike Vrabel is a no-nonsense head coach. As a former player, as a guy that led a championship defense for multiple years, he absolutely is not going to take any type of drama within the locker room, especially from a wide receiver that has lots of baggage with him, especially for a wide receiver that can't get past, bracket coverage against a wide receiver who's a diva. Yeah, John, you and I are on the same spot here. That's why, though, I don't think, and I don't foresee New England going after A.J. Brown. I don't think it's a good fit because of those same exact reasons. Look, A.J. Brown, to me, is no different than Stephon Diggs in the sense that if he doesn't get the ball or have 15 targets a game, guess what? He's not a happy guy. And when he's not a happy guy, guess what? He's going to cause problems. And he's going to be a disruption in the locker room. And he's going to become an issue. And I don't think Mike Vrabel wants that. I think Vrabel wants somebody like and I'm just going to use this as an example, okay? Like a Puka Nacua. Somebody that's going to go out, that's going to play his behind off and not going to cause problems outside of the locker room. You know what I mean? He's going to be a good influencer in the locker room. He's not going to ruffle feathers. He's going to do everything possible to, stay in the good graces of his coaching or coaches and do everything possible to absolutely be an impact player. Can A.J. Brown be an impact player? Absolutely. But you have to take the good with the bad. That's why somebody like DJ Moore makes more sense to me than A.J. Brown in New England. Granted, good evening, Reagan. Granted, with the fact that DJ Moore can give up on plays, the fact that DJ Moore may not show max effort all the time, look, that's followed him since Carolina. Let's just be clear here. He's not without his flaws, okay? The fact, though, that he has been as productive as he has been, the fact of the matter is, he would be a nice target for Drake May. And I feel like DJ Moore would be a nice fit for them. I would be interested in looking at, what you might be able to get from New England for DJ Moore. I don't think you're going to get any players back, but I believe you're going to, you could get some draft capital back. I don't think that's a bad thing. But I think you're going to have multiple. If you're Chicago and you want Max Crosby that badly, you're going to have to get multiple teams involved. It's going to have to be Vegas, Chicago, and name the other team. Whether it's DJ Moore that you're getting rid of, whether it's Tremaine Edmonds that you're getting rid of, whether it's both of them and a third-round pick or a second-round pick, Vegas wants 2 ones. Look, I can give you this year's 1 and I'll give you next year's 3. I can't give you 2 ones for a guy who's 31 years old, who's got maybe 3 years left. Let's be honest here. Max is not a spring chicken. Yes, he has a motor that goes 999 miles an hour. But I've got to know that he is going to absolutely make all the difference in the world on that defense. And I think he would. Doesn't matter if he goes to Chicago, if he goes to Dallas, if he goes to, wherever. He's going to be an impact player. I don't think that there's any question about that. But the question becomes, what do you have to give up to get him? If the price is too steep, look, I don't look at it that way. If the price for Max Crosby is too rich for my blood, you know what? I walk away. I get he wants to be in Chicago, and he wants to play with Caleb, and he wants to play with or for Ben Johnson. But there's a price. And if that price is 2 ones and a second and a third, no way. Absolutely not. No way. Because then you're funding Vegas's turnaround for the next few years, and you've got a guy that may not be on the field as much as you need him to be. At that point, you know what? Go out and sign Trey Hendrickson. Or go trade for Kayvon Thibodeau, sign Khalil Mack, and there's your improved pass rush. Look, Kayvon Thibodeau is good against the run. His pass rushing numbers not so great. Khalil Mack can still get home, but he's older. His body's breaking down. You could probably get him on the cheap. But again, I don't believe that that's an option right now for Chicago. I think Chicago wants to get Max Crosby. So we'll have to see. We'll have to look at all of the options for Chicago. But there are so many different reports out there, and people just posting absolute garbage. And look, as a guy that I'm not on my phone constantly all day. Now, look, tomorrow I will be because I'll be home. But look, there are things that I just, it frustrates me when people when people that don't or that aren't in the know just post stuff to post stuff. Look, if you don't have a credential behind you or in your bio, I'm sorry, but you're just a troll. And you're just doing this for clickbait. And I refuse to do that. I'm not going to do that unless if I have a source that I can run with. I'm not doing it. And there are other people in our industry and in our business that want to do that. And I'm not okay with it. And I'm not going to do that. And I tell you guys, look, I try to give attribution or credit to anybody that I see. And again, I look for this at this point. I'm thankful that I took all those journalism classes to know the law, because for people spreading false information, that's not a good thing. And there's going to be a lot, John. You and I are in lockstep here. There's going to be a lot of information that comes out here over the next few weeks. And again, I look at Ian Rappaport, Adam Schefter, Tom Pelissero, Mike Garafolo from NFL Network, ESPN, all those respected guys and gals. Diana Rossini from The Athletic, Stacey Dales from NFL Network. Look, there are really good reporters out there. And if you can follow one of them and you can get on, one guy I was very fortunate to meet over the summer for the first time was Brad Biggs from the Chicago Tribune when I was at Bears training camp. And he and I talked for a few minutes and really appreciate all his years of being on the beat. That is somebody that I trust explicitly when it comes to Bears coverage. Adam Hogue, Adam Johns, all of those guys in the Chicago area, I trust. But these trolls here on Vikings, for the Vikings and for the Raiders and for the Giants and anybody. There's just so much misinformation out there. It's just frustrating to try to navigate and you have to be careful. whether it's X, whether it's Facebook, whether it's, TikTok, whatever. I, you know, I, and it just goes to show you that anybody that has a social media account can become an expert in um, in the NFL cap space. Yeah, the Vikings are in cap hell right now, and they are releasing lots of guys. Um, Jonathan Allen, defensive tackle, is going to be gone. Javon Hargrave is going to be gone. Look, if I'm Chicago, if I can't get Max Crosby, look, I'm going to do what I can to beef up that defensive line. Jonathan Allen would be a phenomenal pickup for Chicago. He would be great if they can get him. But again, I don't believe everything that I read. I don't believe everything that I see. Again, unless if it comes from one of those guys, one of those or gals that are reputable, I'm not going to report it. I'm just not. I think that in the NFL anymore, there's so much misinformation that gets put out there, whether it's through agents, whether it's through players' burners accounts, whether it's through coaching burner accounts or GM's burner account. Look, the NFL guys see that. The NFL guys see that, and they know it, and reporters know it, and they're going to only report the facts, and that's just the cold hard truth. So, and look, there's reports that Quincy Adolfo-Mensah is going to look at an antitrust lawsuit against the Vikings for firing him, and if he's got evidence about it, you know what? All more power to him. But if he doesn't, you can lose your job as quickly as you get it in the NFL, because if you don't draft well, if you don't sign free agents to good contracts, you're gonna have a rough road. And I look at former Bears general manager Ryan Pace as a prime example. He had very bad drafts. He had very bad free agent signings, and he was gone after a number of years. He went then to Atlanta, who fired him for being a director of player personnel, and he's getting picked up in other areas for being a scout and a VP of scouting and things like that. Look, he might have a great eye for talent, but he can't draft worth a damn. And it messed the Bears up multiple years when he was the general manager, when it was, Patrick Mahomes versus Mitch Trubisky. Need I say more, Bears fans? And look, I don't think Patrick Mahomes would be the Patrick Mahomes in Chicago anyway. But we'll never know. We'll never know. Yeah, Ethan, we'll get to some baseball talk, I hope, here in a little bit. But before we do so, let's take a quick time out. We're going to hear from our friends over at I Know a Guy Remodeling. And then when we come back, we'll continue talking here about some NFL news and keep things moving here on the Last Row Podcast. But first, a word from I Know a Guy Remodeling. It's March. Brackets are everywhere. Upsets, Cinderella runs. Everybody thinks they've built the perfect lineup. But let me ask you something. If your house had a bracket, would your kitchen even make it past the first round? Is your bathroom a 16 seed hanging by a thread? Listen, championships aren't built on hope. They're built on strong foundations. And when it's time to upgrade your starting five, new cabinets, new tiles, finished basements, you don't draw up the play yourself. you call in a coaching expert. I Know a Guy Remodeling. No busted brackets, no blown leads, just clutch performance when it matters most. This spring, build a contender. Because in this house, we don't rebuild to compete. We rebuild to win. You can check out a link to their Facebook page on our website, www.lastrowpodcast.com, because everybody deserves to know a guy. And now you do. I Know a Guy Remodeling. All right, we are back here on the Last Row Podcast. Thank you so much for sticking around with us. Lots of news, lots of things happening, lots of potential trades and things like that. But the Bears are still favored to get Max Crosby. Right now, they're still favored at 145. I would love for them somehow or another to land, to be able to land Tyler Linderbaum and Max Crosby. Do I think they'll be able to? Probably not. But I think it would be really, really cool if they could. And I think that for Chicago, Max Crosby just checks so many boxes for a number of different players, and for a number of different reasons. So yeah, I feel like for Chicago, he is absolutely as good as advertised. But I'm also aware of the fact that look, it's not a given that he's going to be the savior that everybody thinks he is. And for them, and for the Bears, they need to absolutely make sure that they've got an opportunity to get the best player possible. Who's going to have the biggest impact on your defense? Who's going to have the biggest impact on your team? And again, I feel like for the Bears, they have a few decisions to make. So does Dallas. If Dallas doesn't get Crosby, and look, they're after him. But if Dallas doesn't land him, what does that tell you about how Jerry Jones is viewed in the NFL anymore? What does that tell you necessarily about how the Cowboys are viewed anymore in the NFL? After multiple years of having mediocre defenses, after multiple years of missing the playoffs, Dallas is doing a lot of reconstruction, and dropping players that realistically, they probably shouldn't, i.e. Kenny Clark. But you know what? That's Jerry Jones for you. And if Jerry can get out of having to pay somebody, he's going to. And I feel that Dallas is almost in a rebuild type of sense. That's the vibe that I'm getting from that and from them, because I just feel like they have a really they have no direction in my mind. And maybe I'm wrong. Look, I mean, I know they obviously want to win the NFC East. That's obviously where they want to go. Dak is their quarterback. But again, they don't have there's not a good blueprint for them at this point. Now, one team that does have a blueprint is the LA Rams and Sean McVay and Les Snead. And they know that their offense is good enough, but the defense has to get better. And that's one of the reasons why today they made a blockbuster deal for Trent McDuffie, the cornerback from the Kansas City Chiefs. And we've talked about it, at nauseum. But the fact that McDuffie has garnered so much, again with being a pretty good cornerback. I mean, let's be honest here. He's been solid for Kansas City. The fact now that they are going in a different direction and they're getting a number of draft picks, I feel that this is an absolute opportunity for the Rams dealing these 4 draft picks. Look, LA is going all in. LA knows that they have to have corners, and he is by far one of the best nickel corners in the game in slot coverage. And next year the Super Bowl will be at SoFi Stadium in LA. The Rams won their last Super Bowl in LA at SoFi. So the blockbuster deal then was Matt Stafford. Now they get Trent McDuffie, and realistically, they're saying to hell with those picks. And I'm cleaning that up, obviously, for our content. But, look, over the last almost 10 years, here's how the Rams, and this is per Field Yates, here's how the Rams' first-round picks have gone. 2017, traded to the Titans. 2018, traded to the Patriots. 2019, traded to the Falcons. 2020, to the Jags. 21, to the Jags. 22 and 23, to the Lions. 24, they drafted Jared Verse. 25, traded to the Falcons. 26, to the Chiefs. If you're catching a trend here with LA, it's that they don't miss their first-round picks. They go out and get the best players that they can, and they go out and they do it so they are able to contend. Instead of trying to draft and develop, they're just kind of going, all right, you know what, we'll trade these draft picks and we'll take our shot and we'll hope that we do something well. The one thing that concerns me about that, and I've always said it, is that for me, I want to know that we're going to have at least some type of development happening. And if we don't, then we better be really, 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 really positive that we're going to be really good. And if we're not, then I don't want to lose that draft capital. But you have to figure that they have Matt Stafford, Sean McVay, Puka Nacua, Kyron Williams, and they feel like they have they've got a good system in place to know that, hey, you know what? We've got an okay defense. This is going to make us even better. We know that we're going to have a great opportunity, again, to contend and be in the NFC West. And realistically, look, if we have a good year again, we're going to be in the playoffs. There's no reason to doubt that we won't be good. And we know we can hit on our later round picks. And that's what they do. And they know that it's a destination location. And they know that LA has some of the best facilities in the NFL. And they're going to do everything in their power to make sure that they are, again, a prime destination for multiple years to come. And with that, they want to send Stafford out with a ring. look, I think, too, the other part of this is I wonder how much longer Sean McVay wants to coach, at least for this round, because there's a lot of interest. There's a lot of interest in TV with Sean McVay. And before ESPN signed Joe Buck and Troy Aikman, there was talk that they had a deal for Monday Night Football worked out with him where McVay was going to leave coaching and go be the next John Gruden. And there's a lot of people that feel he still can do that. I wonder how much longer he wants to keep doing it. I wonder how much longer he's going to have that desire to, continue on. And I believe somebody even asked him this past season, how much longer do you want to do this? And he still has fun with it, and he still wants to be productive at it. And look, he wants to win another Super Bowl. And I think, I think it makes sense. That would truly cement him as being one of the best young coaches in the game right now. And look, he's already there. He's already got it with the one. But the fact that he's got a coaching tree now that is generating good potential coaches. I mean, look, they're having Matt Stafford doesn't hurt, excuse me. But I will say this much. You know what you have to have with Matt Stafford? You've got to have a really good backup. Because Stafford can get hurt. And we've shown, and he's shown that he is truly durable. But the back injury last season that started the year off wasn't good. And it hindered him all of training camp. And there were questions. They had Jimmy Garoppolo as the backup along with Stetson Bennett from Georgia. I don't think they're confident enough with that option. I don't believe they're confident enough within their backup. And Sean McVay is another coach that has done enough in the NFL. McVay has to garner a little bit of, I guess the only term I can think of is grace, or a little bit of leniency with his team, because look, they win. They're consistently in the playoffs almost every year, and kudos to them. But they've got to have a backup for Stafford this year, and I don't believe they can go on with Garoppolo or Bennett. I think they have to have somebody that's a little bit more established. I think. Maybe I'm wrong. But I feel like it's an opportunity for the Rams to bolster their team if they can get a good backup. They don't need the picks. We've seen it. Yeah, Robbie, that's not a bad idea. I'm wondering, though, if somebody like Geno Smith, who, let's be honest here, when Geno Smith first was in Seattle a couple years ago, he wasn't bad. He didn't have a bad season. I wonder about, somebody like that. I wonder about somebody like a Tua Tagovailoa, who, let's be honest here, could use a fresh start somewhere else. And what better way of doing that than with a quarterback-friendly offense? Something like that. Yeah, Kyler Murray could be there, but I think Murray's going to Minnesota. It just makes too much sense. It just makes too much sense to me. But again, crazier things have happened. Look, I think Tyson Bagent is still on the trade block. I think Tyson Bagent is still a possibility for Arizona, or apparently the Jets were interested in him. I saw a deleted tweet that somebody had. about the Jets showing interest in Bagent. Look, if you want to trade Tyson Bagent somewhere and get a draft pick for him, look, if Mac Jones, per NBC Sports and Rotoworld, is saying that Mac Jones is fetching a first, that's what San Francisco wants for him. There's no reason why Bagent can't be a 2. No reason whatsoever. So, I think there's so much out there that we've talked about and that we even haven't even broached yet, because we don't know what other options or what other trades might be brewing at this point. But I'll say this much. The speculation side of it's fun. And with the league year opening next week and free agency next week on the 11th, a week from tonight, actually, I find that is, it's a week from tonight. Wait. Check that. Yeah, it's a week from tonight. I feel like it is a great opportunity to see what can happen and where guys can go, where guys will go, and could there be a big name moved in free agency or through a trade? Absolutely. And I'm not talking about like a Max Crosby or a Kayvon Thibodeau or anything. I'm talking about somebody else that we haven't even thought of yet. Somebody else, maybe Joe Burrow. God, I don't want him in Minnesota. Lamar Jackson. Again, I don't want him in Minnesota. Actually, I wouldn't mind him in Minnesota. He won't play much anyway. But again, there are options. There are options. And I feel like there are a number of different teams that can step up and make big deals. Yeah, I mean, the David Montgomery thing is interesting to me too, John, because I'm not sure. I don't believe David Montgomery is an every down back anymore. I just don't. I feel like he's not as durable as he once was. But Houston sees a lot in him, and maybe they feel like they can catch lightning in a bottle with their own version of Sonic and Knuckles. The other thing it does is it makes for Jahmyr Gibbs' fantasy draft or fantasy football status go higher, and it makes for Jahmyr Gibbs' load to be a lot more. Now, could they bring somebody else in Detroit to continue the Thunder and Lightning-esque, tandem at running back? Absolutely, they could. Could they draft somebody? Absolutely, they could. But they're in such salary cap hell in Minnesota. I don't necessarily know what they're going to be able to do. And I think his. I think that his fantasy value, Reagan, will go up as well. But I also don't think that Montgomery has much left on the tread. I mean, you think about all the work that he did in Chicago with the Bears, and then what he did when he went to Detroit, his first couple of years. Again, I feel that he's got a lot to prove, and there's enough to try and get or squeeze more out of that lemon. But I don't know what's left. I don't know how much juice is in the tank. I just don't, and I'm not sure Montgomery knows either. I'll be honest. He's taken a lot of hits. He's taken a lot of damage, if you will. And he's gotten himself into a spot where he could be a really good change of pace back. But I don't think he's the lead back anymore. I don't believe he is. So there's that. Real quick, I am currently, if you see me glancing in this direction, I currently have the Northwestern Wildcat game on against Purdue that's happening right now. And I will just tell you this. If Purdue loses this game to Northwestern in Evanston, and even if they don't lose it, if they come out and they win this game, if Purdue wins it somehow, the fact that Northwestern has hung around, they currently have the lead 66-65 with 1:03 to go in the second half. A lot of time left. If Northwestern wins this game, I think the heat on Matt Painter goes from really, really hot to scorching, because this is not setting them up for success in the Big Ten tournament. This is not setting them up for success in the NCAA tournament, and it's not setting them up for a good run. Yes, Purdue is right, Robbie. Yeah, Matt Painter. We've talked about it here. Painter may be out of a job, and yes, they did, John. Yeah. The loss from Arizona last night, or the loss from Kansas, last night, not good at all. Really bad look for Bill Self, getting ejected in the first half, trying to get his team some juice. Look, they're still, the Big 12 is such a good conference too. Arizona's not that great of a team. Bobby Hurley is not Danny Hurley. Bobby Hurley is not that good of a coach. But I don't know. There's nothing you're going to do to Bill Self, okay? You're not firing him. But I think at this point in time, you have to question the effort by Kansas. You have to. Just like I think you have to question the effort by Purdue tonight. Now, Purdue is up by 2. There have been 9 lead changes in the last 5.5 minutes. And Robbie, you and I are in lockstep on this, because the job that Painter has done, and look, he's been a consistent winner at Purdue. There's no question about that. Okay, he's been really, really good, and to be the guy to be the successor to Gene Keady. Nobody wants to be the guy that follows the legend, right? Nobody wants to be that guy. He's done it, and he's been the exception to that rule. Without question, though, he's underperformed. He's been very underwhelming in the NCAA tournament, and I think that's a problem. He's been there 21 years, and they are just not. They're not as good as they could be, and it's just not good. Northwestern has had 2 really bad turnovers here in the last 30 seconds, and they got a miss by Purdue, and they just couldn't. They're pooping the bed. They're having the Sam Darnold moment right now. They're being Northwestern, where Northwestern just isn't good enough. And Purdue may escape with this win. And if they do, though, I still think there is a ton of heat that needs to be on Matt Painter, because there is no reason why number 15 Purdue should be this bad against Northwestern. I'm sorry, there's not. Northwestern has 13 wins against 16 losses. Purdue is 22-7. They're playing down to their opponent. Northwestern is not a good team. I don't know how Chris Collins has lasted this long there after being Mike Krzyzewski's lead assistant at Duke for so long. He has absolutely not. I mean, he's yes, they've made the NCAA tournament a couple of times. First time in years that they've in school history that they've done it. But look, they are not a good team. And the issue here is I don't necessarily think it's a coaching issue per se, but I think it's an academia issue because the academic restrictions and requirements at Northwestern are very, very strict, and they don't have necessarily enough guys that they can go and get NIL money and things like that are going to make that big of a difference. So they've got to have guys that are coached up, and Chris Collins is good at that, but he's not his dad. He's not Doug Collins, that's for sure. All right, couple of other things in terms of the sports world, just in general. The Chicago Blackhawks have made another trade tonight, and look, I think it's going to be a interesting few nights for the Hawks. I think it's going to be an interesting night for in the NFL. Pro Football Talk is now saying the Vikings are to release Jonathan Allen. Sean Tucker, Bucks running back, is getting declined. They're not offering him a tender in Tampa Bay. Look, I don't believe that. I think over the next week we're going to see some big names moved, and I've said that for the last week and a half, and I know it, and I'm a broken record. But with the opportunity to have a big name player come to your team, everything has to be on the table. And whether it's draft picks, whether it's other players, whatever it might be, you have to have it, and you've got to be able to pull the trigger on things, and you can't be afraid of it, and you have to be able to do what you can to win now in the NFL. And the NFL is a win league, the win now league. The Hawks give up Jason Dickinson and Colton Dock. And Edmonton gives up Andrew Mangiapane and a 2027 first-round pick. That's top 12 protected. Purdue has won 70-66. Akin to Monty last night being at the Georgetown St. John's game where St. John's won by 3. We're seeing some not so good teams put up really big fights and really good fights against some teams that should bury them. And realistically, I don't believe that. I don't believe that. I don't believe that. We're not done seeing that. I don't think this weekend. I think we're going to see some teams that should be better than other teams really struggle. And I think it's because, look, it's we're into March. We're into the heart and soul of college basketball with championship week 2 weeks away. You've got big games in the conference that you have to win if you're going to be a top seed in the NCAA. And by top seed, I mean at least a top 10 or top 6, let's say. Within the NCAA bracket. NIL has spread the wealth around of talent, absolutely, and there's no question about that. Look, I wonder what has to happen for some of these coaches like Matt Painter, like Brad Underwood at Illinois. Not necessarily Bill Self, because I think he's a, no pun intended, self-made man in Kansas. He'll retire from there at this point. But I wonder where, what happens when these coaches get let go. I wonder where they end up. Could they just flip-flop spots. Could Painter end up at Illinois and Brad Underwood go to Purdue? It'd be fascinating to see, but I don't think it's going to happen. But I think we're going to see multiple coaches let go, and I think they're going to be big name ones. I don't think they're going to be mid-level guys, if you will, from big name programs. Couple of other things here. Seeing some really bad Major League Baseball talk here recently. And people talking about, oh, this player, this player this player that. Look, it's spring training. You can't judge how a guy is playing in spring like it's middle of May. You just can't. The ball travels differently in warm weather, whether it's Florida, whether it's Arizona. You can't judge that based upon what you're seeing in spring training. I don't care what team you root for, whether it's the Yankees, the Dodgers, the Cubs, the White Sox, the Angels, whoever. It doesn't matter. The fact is, it's way too soon. It's way too early to be panicking about spring training. And if you're already panicking about, a pitcher who, prime example. Shota Imanaga for the Chicago Cubs had a really rough outing earlier this week. Pitched, I think, for 5 innings, gave up 4 home runs, 2 or 3 walks, just didn't look good. The ball carries different in spring. It just does. Alex Bregman right now is on a tear for Chicago. He's hitting the ball really, really well. Guess what? What's bad for them and what's bad for the Cubs is realistically, that's not going to carry over to the first few games at Wrigley Field on March 26th because of the fact that it's going to be 40 degrees and cold. The ball's not going to carry. It's just not. So that's where I think you have to just kind of pump the brakes on spring training a little bit. Garrett Cole for the Yanks, look, I mean, you want him back at his old self, right? But, he's getting up there. I mean, look, there's a reason why Jerry Reinsdorf doesn't, on the south side of Chicago, there's a reason why he doesn't like paying for pitching. And it's because after after a few years, they're just not as good. They're just not. And that's why you have so many different look, I hope that Justin Steele for the Cubs comes back and looks exactly how he did before Tommy John. Meaning 2 years ago, not last year. Because he is, when he's on, he's a very good left-handed pitcher. Garrett Cole, when he's on, is a very good and dominant pitcher. But he's getting up there in age. And I don't think his best years are behind him, but they're creeping up. But then I look at somebody like a Max Scherzer, who has been pitching since the 1980s, it feels like. And he is a completely different animal, I think, compared to what he's still the tenacious bulldog that he's always been. But I think he's doing it now with a little bit more finesse. And I think that's a lost art in the world of pitching. I think that, and you're right, John, it's a different feel when Garrett Cole's on the mound versus Carlos Rodon. And Carlos Rodon, look, let's be honest here. When he was with the White Sox, he sucked. He was horrible. He had a couple good games, but that was it. And the Sox traded him, and they got a lot of value for him to the Giants, and then he went to the Yankees. I mean, look, And he's a completely different pitcher now than when he was with Chicago. Yeah, Max Fried absolutely was your ace. Yeah, no question. No question about it. But I feel like when you have an older pitcher like a Chris Sale or like a Garrett Cole, Justin Verlander, those guys who once relied on power, now have to rely on finesse and have to rely on location. And if they can do what Greg Maddux used to do, and look, Greg Maddux was the greatest pitcher I've ever seen pitch. And it was because he did that. He pitched. He was absolutely a menace out there on the mound. And he had guys guessing left and right, up and down, east and west. He was surgical is a great term, John, for it. Because he could just dissect guys left and right. And his time in Chicago and Atlanta and then back to Chicago, look, I don't know that I've ever seen a pitcher be that magical. And he with Tom Glavine and John Smoltz and hell, even Steve Avery in Atlanta for the number of years that they were in Atlanta together, I'm stunned they didn't win more than one World Series. I'm stunned by that because of how good that pitching staff was. And Maddux in the postseason was just as good as what he was in the regular season. He was surgical. And it shocked me that he only won one World Series. It shocked me. But Maddux was just incredible to watch. And I think if you're an older pitcher in Major League Baseball, you could look to Greg Maddux and say, okay, he didn't have powerful stuff. His fastball was low 90s, but damn, could he locate? And could he keep hitters off balance? And that's exactly what he did. And that's why he was so good for so long. That's why he was a Hall of Famer. And that's why he will, in my opinion, go down as one of the greatest pitchers of all time. Plain and simple. All right. That's going to do it for this edition of the Last Row Podcast. I want to thank you so much for sticking around with us, for joining us, whether that's on Apple Podcast or through Spotify or through Amazon Music. If you've been watching on YouTube Live, thank you so much. If you're watching on TikTok Live, stick around. We appreciate it. We are going to be back with you tomorrow night. And again, breaking news changes everything. Maybe Max Crosby gets traded tomorrow. Maybe he gets traded tonight. Maybe he doesn't get traded at all. Maybe there's another name that we haven't heard of that's going to get traded. We'll have to wait and see. But until then, I'll see you in the last row.